Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have more fun. And if you're having more fun, it's not really worth it, right? Gotta have more fun. My name is Paul Sanneman. I'm your host. I'm the founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build awesome teams. I have as my guest today Ryan Conway from Digital Tradesman. So, Ryan, tell me, why should people listen to you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Paul. I appreciate it. So why should they listen to me? That's a great question, and I often hear that a lot when I'm working with potential clients. And the thing is, like, especially right now in the game, there's a lot of people who kind of come in because the marketing agency world is a very low barrier to entry. And in many ways, the contractor world is a low barrier to entry too. Most of the times it's a guy starting in a pickup truck because he didn't want to swing the hammer for somebody else and decided to do it for him. So uh, the biggest difference is I've been doing this for well over a decade. I built my first WordPress website back in 2010, um, and really kind of run the whole gamut. And what I've learned is that you don't just need a website, you don't just need to do SEO, you don't just need to do paid ads. All those things are great, and on some level you do need them. But what you really need is a system that ties all of these things together. Because if you're not generating leads, that's a whole separate issue. If you have leads but you're not able to convert them or keep track of them, that's a entirely separate issue. And how do you convert those leads into appointments, and how do you convert those appointments into sales? So what I've tried to do is kind of distill everything that I've been working on over the last, dozen plus years of all these different services and combining them into one, where we kind of put together a whole program. And I work more as a growth partner than just doing these one-off services that may or may not get you the results that you need.
Okay, well, the questions that come up from my clients a lot is things like, well, what percentage should I spend? How much should I spend on marketing, percentage of gross? Should I spend it on building brand, or should I spend it on pay per click? And the other one is, how do I tell it's working? So let's sort of take those questions. First one, how much should I spend on marketing? And it was like, how much should I spend on a car? But just give it a shot. A typical,
Ideal,
I've made a couple million, 2, 3 million. He's a remodeling contractor or a roofing contractor, something like that.
yeah, ideally you should be spending anywhere from 5 to 15 or maybe even 20% on marketing. And I know in the contracting space, marketing seems to be one of those things that's often neglected and many times. So um, yeah, you definitely want to be spending a certain amount, like 5 to 10% at least, on marketing, because it's the only way that you're going to get your name out there. And although a lot of times people say, "Oh, I only rely on referrals," well, referrals aren't often predictable. So what happens when those referrals start to dry up, or the projects that you're working on, you don't like working on those types of projects anymore?
Okay. And then what is the percentage I should spend? There's building brand, which is SEO, trapping your trucks, whatever it takes to build your brand, versus just pay per click or pay per lead, that kind of thing. So how should you split your budget between those two?
Well, the pay-per-click is partly why I put together kind of this roadmap that I have. There's 9 steps to it, and the first one is really looking at who your ideal client profile is. Because what I found is there's people who are spending money on advertising that really shouldn't be in a place to be advertising right now, and they're just wasting money because they don't understand who they're actually trying to target, and their money's just getting lit on fire. I mean, Google loves that. They have no problem eating your budget. I
Right.
think there's some studies that have done about 75% of campaigns on Google are not optimized. So they'll take your money all day long. Um, but when it comes to pay per click, like, you really kind of need to be in a place where a referral is a lot different than someone that's coming in as a cold lead. And they might be considered warm in some ways if they're opting into some sort of campaign or calling you from an advertisement, but they're not the same as a referral. And you really need to be talking to them extremely fast. I've had clients where we had to part ways because I'm generating the 15, 20 plus leads. And I said, "What happens to all these?" Said, "They're all bad." I said, "Why?" I said, "Well, none of them left me a voicemail. I didn't talk to any of them." I said, "Well, did you call them back?" "No." Like, well, these aren't referrals. Like, they don't really know who you are. They could be
Right.
clicking and, signing on to 10 other companies and filling out forms. Like, you need to be fast getting back to these people. So in some cases, they don't have the infrastructure to be able to handle these calls. So I've actually partnered with other companies who will take these calls. So when they come in, you're not stuck on the roof trying to answer this phone call,
Yeah.
because the speed to lead is significantly a role, or plays a significant role in how you're going to convert some of these leads that are coming off the internet. So when it comes to brand building, SEO is a tough nut to crack in a lot of cases because it's really just about time, and you have to be able to build out that content. You could be looking at 2 to 6 or 12 months, depending on the market and industry that you're in, to really kind of rank for some of those terms. So as long as you know you're going into it for the long haul, then you'll probably be okay. But I would put at least half of my budget towards brand building and the other half towards, doing kind of pay-per-click type services, but only if you're really in a place to do that, because you kind of need to have an infrastructure set up or you're just going to be set up to fail.
Okay, next question. You said there's 10 steps, right? You just mentioned that really quickly.
Yeah, so I got nine steps in Red
I
Roadmap.
hear those
They go through kind of 3 different phases. It's called the RPM conversion system, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure this is repeatable, we want to make sure it's predictable, and we want to make sure it's measurable.
Okay.
So I actually bought the domain rpmconversionsystem.com. There's a whole bunch of more information about it on there. But there's 3 phases. I call it ready, set, go. And in the first phase, in the ready phase, we're looking at who's your ideal kind of client profile. What is your offer? Because when it comes to paid ads, you need to have an offer that's going to stand out from the other competitors. Because if someone's looking on Google, they're doing a fast search, they're going to see, the first 3 or 4 results or ads, and they're going to go with whatever they may think is the most compelling. So you need to make sure that that is a very compelling offer in terms of what you're offering them, and why they would want to take action. And then the third part is the messaging. How are you going to kind of differentiate yourself from the other competitors? And that's not just through the ads, but that's also messaging on your website, the emails that you send out, or any of the other kind of direct mail that you might be doing. The second phase is the set phase. That's where we go into kind of how we're going to capture these leads, how are we going to convert them, and then how are we going to nurture them? Because ideally, if they're not ready to book a call, we got to put them into some sort of follow-up system where they might be getting text messages and email follow-ups, maybe even additional phone calls to try to get them over the line. We found that it can be anywhere from 5 to 7 or more touches before someone kind of becomes a booked appointment. So we want to make sure that we're continuously hitting them, because the chances that your competitors are doing it are very slim. And then the third phase is the go phase. That's where we're ready to actually start generating leads. We need to make sure the whole system is kind of built out, that you got these automations in place. And then we can look at paid traffic. Ideally, paid traffic is going to be one of the fastest ways to scale generating leads, because most of these kind of networks have gone to a pay-to-play type of model. Like if you want to be seen on Facebook, if you want to be seen on Google, SEO will work, but it's really, you got to kind of pay to play. And so now that we got the messaging and your kind of system built out, you're ready to start putting money into the paid ads. We go into the close phase, which is where we're going to start looking at how do we take more of these leads we generated and close them into booked appointments. If they're booking appointments, but they're not closing into sales, what do we have to do to kind of fix your sales process? And the last phase is kind of how do we maximize this? And that's where we're going to be looking at all of the tracking we've put in place. What can we do to maybe increase more of the clicks that you're getting? How do we decrease the cost per click? How do we increase booked appointments? How do we increase the leads that you've gotten to already kind of opt in? How do we get more of them to continue to book into that next phase? Whether that be through a phone call or online through a booking calendar.
Okay, so then what about, is your job done once they get a booked appointment, or do you care whether the sales guy converts a lead into a sale?
No, I absolutely care if the sales guy converts a lead, and I want to be conversing with them because I need to understand what is that prospect saying to the sales guy. Because these are all things that we can use in the messaging moving forward in terms of what kind of objections or rebuttals do they have? What are their biggest pain points? What are the things that they're specifically saying in their own words? Because that's what we want to take. And if it's the sales guy fumbling, well, what can we do to help push that sale closer to the next phase?
Okay.
And that's how I know that I can prove my worth to the company, is by being able to get some of these sales over the line for them. Because at the end of the day, you really only care about top line revenue. Being able to say how many clicks I generated you isn't really going to pay the bills.
And then do you have any way of saying, well, it cost me $100 a lead, $500 a lead? I mean, and then so much an actual sale, where you're saying, okay, I spent, pick a number, $5,000 a month on marketing, and I got, you know, $100,000 worth of sales? Is it like an RO? Do you figure that out for people?
Yeah, that's actually one of the first things that we start to do before we'll even run traffic is actually break down those numbers, because I found in some cases there's no way for us to, I mean, let me take a step back, because in terms of running paid traffic, you want to be able to ideally break even on the traffic that you're generating, or at least put a dollar in, get two back, get three back, get four back. You don't want to be losing money on advertising unless you know for a fact you're going to be making this up somewhere down or further down the line.
Right.
So we kind of break down these numbers, and I've had to tell clients, like, we can't actually run traffic for you because it doesn't matter how much you spend. The more you spend, the more money you will lose. And it's just a lose-lose situation. So we need to break down those numbers in terms of, well, if we can figure how much we're going to put in, how many clicks we estimate this is going to generate, or how many opportunities this will be for you, and what's your closing rate. We need to look at all of those, because if we can generate you 5 opportunities but your close rate is 10%, then that's not really going to help us either. And so any way that we can kind of boost any of those numbers, the better off that we're going to be.
Now, when you work with people, are you like a fractional CMO where you look at the whole program beginning to end, or you just say we generate leads and it's your problem?
No, I found that a lot now in the kind of marketing spaces, people just say they'll generate you leads, but you don't really know how great those leads are going to be. And frankly, they're not really all that invested in what you do with those leads after, because they can just say, well, we provided a service of generating you leads, you got the leads, you should be happy with that. I want to look at the whole thing. I want to understand what happens after we generate the lead, who's handling it in your company, what happens next, how are you following up with them, what are you saying? Can we put an automation in place where we can automatically drip emails or text messages or phone calls to them, so that you're constantly staying in front of them? Because the longer that this prospect goes without hearing from you, the higher chance that this is not going to end up in a closed sale.
Okay, now, one thing I've noticed, I like your opinion on, I'm going to make up AI, the famous subject, right? Big AI. What does AI do?
Yeah.
You know, there's two parts of AI. I like your comment on both. One is, how is AI assisting or changing what you do and the way you do it in generating leads?
Sure. So AI, I mean, I can't believe we're at a place where we are right now compared to where we were a year ago. Because a year ago, you couldn't even do the stuff that you can now. So I don't know where we're going to be in 6 months or a year from now. But the ability to leverage AI as kind of like an assistant, because I can I can even take a recorded sales call, load it into some of these AI things, and they'll dissect all the things that you're saying and how we can better uh, take your sales messaging and your demo video or whatever it might be, and how do we make this better for you? But how can we use this as an assistant where we can put in some information? Maybe you have a quick query that you don't have to go through Google and read all these different websites. So it's been a great in terms of being able to just quickly spin out ideas for copy, or email marketing or SEO. And because you can look at all these different things that are happening in the market, and now you're able to actually, well, up until recently, you could only leverage data up until 2021. So the last 2 years, or almost 2.5 years, have been non-existent in terms of the AI related stuff coming back to you with that information. But now you're able to start leveraging stuff that's happening in the news. So where it's going, I'm not really entirely sure, but there's a lot of stuff that you would have to have an assistant for that you no longer need to do. You can use AI to start creating blog posts. You can use AI to start creating social media posts if you want to. You do need to go in there and kind of tweak them and play around with them some more. Like, you don't really ever want to take the first pass at some of these things, but the more that you can manipulate it, and I would say it's kind of almost its own unique term now, is prompt engineering. I was looking at Boston Children's Hospital had a job for a prompt engineer. They were paying them almost $300,000 a year. So the medical industry is starting to leverage these things, and I think a lot of contractors can start to leverage this too, because you can even have it do math for you now. It's pretty impressive. So you
I
can
know,
say, if this square footage and this is my price, how much is this going to be, and all of this other stuff.
I know one of the things I was surprised with, I said, these are my 5 competitors. Please analyze my 5 competitors or strengths and weaknesses and tell me why I'm the best. I want to send that to somebody. It'll go to all their websites and analyze all your competitors and tell you what their differences are between you and them, which means
Yep. Yeah, and I've actually been putting in some my competitors' websites or clients' competitors' websites, and say, give me a summary of what they're saying on this website. and it'll say, they're giving, this is what they're claiming, this is what they're saying, this is their messaging. And some of this stuff would take you hours or days to do. Now it can be done in 5 minutes.
Right. Now, there's another effect of AI, and I see this as being in the industry for many years. The construction industry, especially at the remodeling level and the roofing and home services, has been very fractionalized. There's a zillion people out there, two guys in a truck, all trying it. Now, what I see happening, and maybe you can tell me if this is true or not for you, that there's a lot of capital, and what is AI not going to disrupt, as I see it? I mean, when you come to medical, anytime you're selling information for money, AI is going to totally change that industry. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you're an attorney, pretty soon you're going to go to your AI attorney and get all the advice for 25 cents versus, $350 an hour,
You
right?
can have the AI write you almost entirely capable. I would say you might want to have an attorney review them, but they can write you legal documents now.
I know. I've got a guy who's fighting a case against the city, and all he's using is ChatGPT to do it, which is interesting. So, I think that's going to change. What has happened then? All the money, where does the money go? Well, the money's going, capital is going, well, where can I be safe? And AI isn't going to put on a roof for a long time, or it's
No.
not going to remodel for a long time. So what I see happening is, hundreds of millions of dollars coming into this industry. And where there used to, this is my opinion, we get your feedback, where there used to be 20 roofers in a town, 50 remodelers, just because it's a highly fractionalized and two guys in a truck. What's happening is capital is coming in and go, okay, what can we make money? Let's buy 50 roofing companies, or let's buy, 20 plumbing companies. And the problem with that, the good news and the bad news with that is it's going to, instead of having, 30 roofing companies in a town, 5 years ago, you're going to have 3. And but the good news is, or bad news, they're going to be really good at marketing, really good at recruiting. And it's sort of like when Walmart entered retail, it killed downtown, right? Because they were just better, more efficient, better distribution. They just did a better, quicker job than the store downtown. They just killed downtowns by opening Walmarts, outside of town. What I see happening in the next 5 or 6 years is the guy who doesn't jump on board and either get his marketing straight and get his recruiting straight is going to be put out of business by the bigger company that does. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you could almost look at the medical industry in a lot of ways in terms of what happened over the last 5, 7 years. Is a lot of consolidation. So you used to have all these kind of private practices, but that's no longer the case. You have one kind of major hospital that's buying up all these private practices and making kind of this little infrastructure network. So now you're like kind of considered in network. I can see the same thing happening in the contractor space where there's going to be a general contractor who just kind of buys up these other smaller companies, whether they're a roofing company or a siding company, a flooring company, and now they kind of got them in their own network where, because one of the hardest things right now, as you well know, is finding people. So why not, instead of trying to find all these different contractors that you can work with, because some come and go. I've heard horror stories where the people they were working with on 7 to 8 projects, all of a sudden the 10th project it completely fell apart. So why not just bring all those guys kind of in-house, and now you're managing kind of these separate little subdivisions where you can use them on one main project if you're building, houses or a subdivision, or you can just kind of put them out on the streets if they're doing their own little mini projects. But I can totally see that happening. And what I find interesting about the construction space and the AI stuff is when I was younger, I was told, oh, you want to go to college because you don't want to be digging ditches. Like, that's not what you want to do. But now, the only thing that's not getting replaced are people in the construction space. Everything else is getting, I mean, there's massive layoffs happening at Amazon and all these tech companies because all these people were working on building these AI projects. And they said, okay, great. Thanks for building us. Now you can go.
Right.
You built us your replacement,
Bill is your
essentially.
replacement. It works 24/7 and for like a fraction of the cost that you do.
Absolutely.
So what I see, and this is where I think is important to people like you, Ryan, is if you don't have a marketing plan and if you're not competitive there, when they come in to do a roll up in your community and start buying roofing companies, remodeling companies, if you're not a major player, basically they're either going to buy your business or put you out of business. I think those are going to be like the options,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where what I'm trying to do is put everything into a kind of a centralized place. And when most people they don't even have a spreadsheet that they're tracking all of this stuff on. What I have is kind of a CRM that I partnered with this development company on where we track all of this stuff. All of the data gets put into one centralized place. We can have sales pipelines and we can see different stages that they're in, whether they are a cold lead or prospect or referral, an appointment booked, and what happens at all these different phases. Because what's going to happen is if someone's looking to buy your business, they're going to want to see what do you have. And well, we have all this data, and you're going to be a much more, you know, better looking company on the books than some of these other companies. You may get even more multiples because you
Right.
can
But the
see
thing is,
all the data that you have.
I mean, I think it's like musicians trying to fight streaming music. How did that work out, right? It's like,
It didn't, yeah.
and so now they make all their money on merchandise or they're done. So what I see, why it's important to companies, if they don't have state-of-the-art marketing and recruiting, they're going to decide to put you out of business versus buy you, right? And I think that's going to be an option for a lot of companies, because if a company comes in and decides, okay, I'm going to own the roofing market in, Columbus, Ohio, they're going to buy the companies that make sense, and then they're going to put the companies out of business that they're not competitive. I know I had a client of ours, he has, lots of millions of dollars. Instead of putting it in the market, he decided to start a roofing company in Nebraska someplace. And I'm, why that? And he goes, well, look at, if I, in the roofing business, they're old and going out of business, or they're too young to do and don't have any money to do it right. I can come in there, I can kill it with marketing because I know what the heck I'm doing. I can know with recruiting, I can find great people, and I basically can own the market in 4 years from scratch. And I think it's true.
Yeah, if you know how to do the marketing, you will be able to own any of these different markets because that seems to be one of the weakest skill sets of a lot of contractors.
Right.
Or and it's mostly it's not that they're not smart enough to know how to do it, it's they don't have any time to sit down and do any of it. They're just so busy.
And they don't, it's a mindset difference. Like musicians saying, well, streaming music doesn't work for me, I'm not going to do free music. It's sort of like when you marketing, I've been pitching this for many, many years, and yet now I think it's becoming really relevant. Most successful businesses in the Western culture are marketing companies that fund their marketing with some kind of product or service. And
Yes, you're absolutely right about that.
and a contractor says, no, I do a great job at answer the phone. I say, well, I don't think that's going to work out for you in the long run. And now with a lot of capital coming in, it's going to be true. So the people that are going to win the fractionalized industry, which is roofing, plumbing, remodeling, build, all that kind of stuff, are going to be marketing companies that fund that marketing with some kind of product or service. And
Hmm
everybody else is
And,
going to lose.
and going back to kind of the AI conversation, the AI and a lot of this technology is very scalable. What isn't scalable is the human element to it. And I think that what's going to happen over the next couple of years is how do we start to do the unscalable stuff? Because that's really what's going to separate you. Everyone's going to be able to have these email automation campaigns and follow up things and all this stuff happening with technology. But how many people are actually answering the phone and answering those questions and doing much more of a personalized service? That's where I see stuff kind of going to.
Well, I even know roofing companies now I work with actually are having AI call the people, say, can you do an inspection on your roof? We notice that your house is 10 years old, blah, 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 and have the conversation and book the appointment with the salesperson, and it's all AI.
Hmm
And that's just going to get nothing but better. It ain't going to go.
Absolutely.
So, well, this is good information, Ryan. If people want to get in touch with you, and you sound a little more like a fractional CMO, like you just don't provide leads, you want to actually provide.
Yeah, I just found that at the end of the day, it's a lose-lose situation for both of us. Like, you'll often be unhappy that I'm just generating you leads and you're left to just figure out what to do with them. And it's like, for me, the ability to have the relationship over a longer period of time is how we can really start to improve stuff. And if we're only together for 3, 6, 7, 8 months, then we don't really get to like implement a lot of those things that we've been able to see because the initial phase of us working together is really about just gathering data. So if you're running paid ads, you need to be looking at it from a long-term perspective in terms of this is not a 1 month thing, a 2 month thing, a 3 month thing, because only at month three are you really have enough data to say, how can we leverage this campaign now? How can we really kind of turn this into something? And so if you don't have data, then you have to buy it. And you're going to buy it through paying for those ads. And so our goal is to say, how do we minimize the downside of kind of burning your money through paid advertising? Well, we're going to do our best because we know best practices, we know it works. And then every market and every industry is slightly different. So Just because you're a roofer in one market does not mean that's going to just translate to a roofer in another market. The people there are totally different, and what they might be looking for is totally different. Not to mention what your competitors are offering might be totally different.
Right.
So
So how do people get in touch with you? And do you have any like a free analysis or a discovery call, anything like that you can offer our
yep,
listeners?
absolutely. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can go to my website. It's digitaltradesman.net. I'm actually considering buying the .com version because that was not available when I had started this like 7 or 8 years ago. But someone reached out to me saying asked if I wanted to buy it. But right now it's just the .net. Um, you can go to rpmconversionsystem.com where it'll kind of tell you more about the system that I'm putting together. And I do have a 15-point kind of assessment that looks at all your kind of sales and marketing where you can grade yourself, 1, 2, or 3, and you get a score at the end that kind of tells you where you kind of fit in terms of your competitors and the rest of the market.
Let's say one more time, Ryan, it's digitaltradesman.net, right?
Yep, digitaltradesman.net.
Okay. Well, thanks for having us. And I think, as the future comes up, if you want to be bought by the people that are rolling out versus put out of business, I think people like Ryan are really going to help you there. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much, Paul. I appreciate it.